whether we can opt out from these particular sections or not, for whom these sections are applicable, that does not make really these sections presumptive. And friends, it is quite obvious after that seeing the Income Tax Act 1961, because after seeing that Income Tax Act 1961, I always remember the three C's. There was used to be a cinema hall in Delhi with the name Three C's, but that is clearly applicable over the Income Tax Act. By three C's, I mean that compliance, compilation, or complication. Well, as professional, what we are doing? Are we compiling the data for income department? Or we are making compliance of the income tax law? Or as professional, we are complicating the law? Because we all know that the professionals used to interpret the law and not the, you can say, the assessee. So what all we are doing, I think we are doing all the three aspects, the compilation, compliance, or complication. And the result of the same is that the government is bound to make amendments in the law every time. And yesterday only there are amendments in Form 3CD also. So it's like a common feature, like whatever the old used to be saying, that the change is constant. And same with the income tax law now. Earlier there used to be change in once in a year at the time of Finance Act budget, that's all. But now every 10 days or 15 days, we used to get some information. Okay, this has been notified, the form has been changed, the rules has been notified, some clarification circular is there. And then thanks to the media, they interpret that income tax department circulars in such a way that the income tax department is bound to give the press release after that. Recently, we all must have seen that press release in respect of section 206C1H, that after the media news, that income tax department is bound to give that press release also. So friends, let's start with, first of all, there is a brief history regarding that section 44 AD, ADA, etc. When it was introduced, does that history matters anything? Friends, it matters, and that we are going to discuss at a particular point of time, that when the section was introduced, what along with that particular amendment, some press release or some circulars or some memorandum were introduced by the government, whether they helps in interpretation or to judge the intention of the lawmakers or not. So that is a brief history. 44 AD, A when was introduced, then 44 AF, it was made inoperative, then 44 ADA for professionals. Section 44 AD, earlier applicable for civil construction, supply of labor. At that time, turnover receipts were permitted up to 40 lakh. Now it has been increased to 2 crores. We all know. Income minimum 8%. That is still going on. Whether competition has been increased or not, margin has been increased or not, still government is focusing upon minimum margin of 8%. By Finance Act number 2, 2009, scope extended. We all know it was extended to all businesses, subject to some exceptions. Monetary limits increased by Finance Act 2010, 12, and 17. That was from 40 lakh to 60 lakh, then 1 CR, then 2 CR. 44A, we all know, section 44AF for small retail traders. Now it has been merged with 44AD. Let's start with facts. Section 44AD. Who is eligible SSC? That we all know. It is for individual, HUF, general partnership firm, not for LLP. And any SSC who wish to claim deduction under section 10AA, that is in respect of exports, or chapter 6A part C, that is income based deduction, that we say 80IA, 80IB. And what I believe, if anyone is having business which is covered up by 10AA or 80IA or IB, I do not think so his turnover is going to be restricted to that 2 crores only. Obviously, he's going to have a large scale business. Secondly, whenever there is a deduction under section 10AA or chapter 6A part C, it is approximate like 100% generally in starting years. So why anyone is going to declare profits under 44AD? I do not think so, because when he is not eligible to claim deduction, so obviously he is not going to claim 44AD at all. So LLP is not supposed to go for 44AD. Eligible SSC, I have marked cross in this particular case. Person carrying on profession. If any person who is carrying on profession which is covered up by section 44AA subsection 1, that professional cannot opt for section 44AD. It has some particular intention that we are going to discuss at this later side of this PPT slide only. What about other profession? Friends, when we go by section 44AA subsection 1, that provides the exhaustive list of professions. That provides exhaustive list of professions. What about professions which are not covered up by section 44AA subsection 1? Like best aspect, if I talk about the teaching, I'm a teacher and not as an employee. If an employee, then does not, obviously business head does not matter at all. Salary head will be applicable. I'm a teacher on a contract basis, or I'm providing coaching services and I'm highly qualified. Does that tantamount to profession? In practical life, if I talk about the tantamount to profession, no doubt in that particular case. But what about for the purpose of section 44AA subsection 1? It is not covered up by that particular exhaustive definition of profession. Now the question arises whether that particular teacher can opt for 44 ADA first. No, friends. Can that teacher opt for section 44 AD? No. Friends, in my personal opinion, that exception provided by the section 44 AD is clarificatory in nature. And it uses the word business. It uses the word business. Whenever lawmaker wants to make a differentiate, or you can say try to cover up the profession under the along with the business, they have specifically mentioned everywhere the word profession, but not so in case of 44 AD. So that is the purposive interpretation should be there. Why they have not covered the profession? Reason being, generally in case of profession, margin is quite higher, because when we provide services, generally the cost of providing services is low as compared to business. So that may be the reason. In my view, the purposive interpretation should be there. And other professions are also, in my personal view, are not allowed to be opt for section 44 AD at all. Person having income in nature of commission or brokerage, or person carrying on agency business. Now, friends, here is one more technical point, that these particular exceptions are not qua business or profession, are qua assessee. Like any person who is carrying on profession is not eligible for section 44 AD. Now, it is quite possible I am a chartered accountant, I am, for example, carrying on chartered accountant pharmacy business. The doctor cannot offer 44 AD. That is a literal interpretation, but in my view, that seems to be unintended, because there is no, I am not able to derive any logic. You are not eligible for 44 AD. Is imposed on those persons who are carrying on profession which are covered up by 44AA1, and teacher is not by profession which is there in 44. That means the teacher, if he is carrying on business, is eligible for 44 AD for that business and not for teaching profession. But in my opinion, that seems to be unintended, seems to be the purposive interpretation of the law. Turnover, we all know that 2 crore limit is there, but what has to be included for the purpose of turnover? And friends, remember here, turnover is required for 2 purposes and not for 1 purpose. First purpose, whether that assessee is eligible for 44 AD or not, because there is a limit of 2 crore of rupees. And second, of which amount you need to calculate that 6% or 8%, as the case may be. For both the purposes, the definition of turnover will be the same. If we go by the turnover is not defined in Income Tax Act, if we talk about, except for section 145A, this simply talks about regarding the GST, whether it's to be included or not. Besides that, we have to go by ICAI guidance note. As per ICAI guidance note, for the purpose of computation of turnover, we need to add GST, sale of scrap, any cash discount given, not trade discount. If trade discount is already part of gross turnover, then need to be subtracted. Goods returned. Method of accounting, obviously it will matter. It is a choice of the assessee. And if it is that assessee is following cash basis of accounting, then receipts be grossed up with TDS. Friends, section 198 of the Income Tax Act says the TDS shall be deemed to be received by the assessee. If we go by the books of accounts, the cash receipts will be equivalent to the actual amount received by him. But for the purpose of section 44 AD, we need to determine including the TDS amount also, which is deducted on cash receipts, if any. Consignment, we all know, depends on the title of goods, whether it is being transferred or not. Speculative or derivative transaction, we all know. For the purpose of determination of turnover, we have to see the positive and negative profits, and we have to combine, ignoring that positive or negative sign. And that amount will be treated as turnover for the purpose of this particular section 44 AD. Friends, we all know I am not focusing upon these aspects very technically. Reimbursement not to be included. In kind, if you are receiving consideration, need to be included. Now coming the technical point. Only business receipts to be considered. Only business receipts to be considered. Now, for example, I'm making a small profit and loss account. And along with that, we're also going to discuss how to disclose these particular aspects in ITR if need to be disclosed. Like very small P&L account. Now here we have, for example, sales 1.9 CR and interest on FD 11 lakh. Now this particular FD may be by because of two reasons. First of all, I have taken some, like you can say, kind of guarantee or from bank or some like export guarantee, in which case banks generally ask us to have some FD with the bank as a safety, as a security. Now that FD, I am forced to go for that FD because of that requirement of my business. And because of that FD, my business may not be the similar. Second aspect may be like that I have entered into that particular FD because I am having some idle funds and I have invested into the bank. Now friends, in the second case, if I've invested idle funds into the bank in the form of FD, that interest does not form part of my business receipts, because that has no relation with the business at all. In that case, that interest will be taxable as part of income from other sources, unless and until my business is of money lending. If it is a money lending, it is an altogether different case. If I'm carrying a normal trading business, I'm making investment of idle funds in the bank in the form of FD, that interest will form part of income from other sources. And if that will form part of income from other sources, will it be counted towards the turnover? No, friends. It will not count it towards the turnover at all. So what we have to check out, that business receipts. Only the business head turnover need to be seen and other heads are to be excluded for the purpose of determination of applicability of section 44 AD. Let's go friends further. Now this is the, you can say, the question which is being asked in the professional environment again and again, and by the professionals as well as SSC all. Very small example. I am having turnover of 90 lakh rupees. 8% of the same comes to 7.2 lakh. My actual margin, like for example, is 15 lakh. Now the very simple question is, do I need to disclose 15 lakh rupees margin in my ITR? Or is it sufficient if I disclose 7.2 lakh as profit margin and opt for section 44 AD? That is a question. Friends, for these aspects, we should go for multiple things to derive the intention of the income tax department. Although it is not 100% clear in the income tax law. First of all, when section 44 AD was introduced, and simultaneously later on some amendments were made, and every time the income tax department or the government issued memorandum along with the same. And if you go by the language of the memorandum never said that purpose of section 44 AD is to reduce tax burden of the assessee. What they have said, facilitate better tax compliance, save resources of small businessmen, ease of completion of assessments. The purpose of section 44 AD was to make computation of total income easy, and by reducing the compliance burden of the assessee by saving him from maintenance of books of accounts and tax audit. Indirectly, what I can say, the department said to the small traders or small businessmen that if you are going to maintain books of accounts or if you are going for tax audit, you need to pay fees to the accountants or the chartered accountants. Do one thing, you calculate your income on estimated basis, and whatever you are paying that as fees to the accountant or chartered accountant, just pay to us. Just pay to us. The government is saying that there is no need to pay accountant or chartered accountant, pay to us. We are reducing your compliance burden. So friends, in this nutshell, the section 44 AD purpose was never to reduce the tax burden of the assessee. That is the first aspect, gives the intention of the department. Second aspect, please listen carefully. If we go by the language of 40, what it says? It says 8% of the turnover or higher margin as declared by the assessee, as declared by the, or as claimed to have been earned by the assessee, not by the department, not by the books, but by whom? By the assessee. What does it mean? That if assessee claims that his actual margin is more than 8%, then actual margin is required to be disclosed in ITR. But who have to claim? The assessee. I received this counter argument many times from professional or the assessee. I am not claiming. As an assessee, I am not claiming that I have earned higher. Who has to claim? The assessee. If AO claims that the assessee has earned the higher margin, that does not matter at all. What is the language of the law? The assessee claims that he has earned higher. Okay, that's the point. That means I can declare 8% margin and I will be safe enough. That is more than enough. But friends, now for example, I have actual margin of 15 lakh. Now, just imagine a situation, there is a scrutiny of this particular year. And the income tax department is assessing amount of 15 lakh rupees or year-end balance of rupees 15 lakh. What is the relevance of 6%? We all know around 2 or 3 years back, they have given us the benefit. Can anyone tell me what for which amount section 6% is applicable?
All through banking channels received.
Okay, that's very nice. And from banking channel up to which particular date? Any particular date, or it could be received even after 2 years? Anyone having idea? You can use the chat box to give me a reply or whatever the source you have. Let's discuss first of all these aspects when this 6% is applicable. Ms. Bharti, I think pen is not working fine today because of some reason, and I'm not able to find out. It's a little bit slow in writing. Friends, first of all, the law says that 8% can be substituted for 6% for the turnover which is received through banking channel, as said by the Ms. Bharti. Banking channel includes your account pay check or account pay draft or electronic clearing system. These 3 modes only. For that turnover, you can go for 6% margin, provided that amount is received on or before due date of ITR. Like if it is a previous year 1920 sale, you are including that particular turnover in previous year 1920. The amount which is received on or before due date of ITR is eligible for 6%. Amount which is outstanding, you need to compute minimum 8% margin. Now friends, when we have discussed the aspect that you need to declare your actual margin if it is higher than 8% or 6%, then what is the relevance of 6%? If I am having margin of 15%, obviously I need to disclose 15%. Then how does 6% matter? That we are going to discuss. Friends, this is the minimum margin. Now, for example, I'm taking 2 or 3 examples. Like my turnover is, for example, 1.6 CR, out of which 1 CR is through banking channel and 60 lakh is through cash. Am I eligible for 44AD? Yes, no doubt. There is no problem in that. Now, first of all, my example 1, my actual margin is 4%. Now, I have 2 options, whether not to opt for 44AD. In that case, consequences will be there. Maybe maintenance of books of accounts, maybe tax audit, all these aspects. That is another part we are going to discuss separately. My actual margin is 4%. Still, I want to opt for 44AD. And if I go for 44AD, how much profit I need to disclose? Friends, in that case, on this amount, I need to disclose 6%. And on this 60 lakh, I need to disclose 8%. This will make it 6 lakh. And this is 4.8 lakh. And it will be total 10.8. second case, my actual margin is 15%. Now in this case, as what we have discussed earlier, 15% I need to disclose, that is 15 lakh. 15% I need to disclose, that is 9 lakh. And total it will be 24 lakh. Now the question arises, is my margin is 7.5%. My actual margin is 7.5%. And I need to go for section 44AD. I do not want to maintain books of accounts. I do not want to go for tax audit. I want to go for section 44AD. How much percentage profit I need to disclose? Friends, for this 60 lakh, I need to disclose 8%. It will be 4.8 lakh. What will be my actual margin? 7.5% of 1.6 CR. Let me calculate through the calculator. This computer has created problem for all us 7.5% equal to, that is 12 lakh rupees. Friends, my actual margin is 12 lakh, but I want to go for 44AD. So on this 60 lakh, I need to disclose 8% margin, that is 4.8 lakh. What about margin on this 1 CR? Is that sufficient if I disclose margin of 6 lakh? No, friends. If my actual margin is higher than the, you can say the 6% or 8% as the case, maybe I need to disclose actual margin. And on this 1 crore, my actual margin is 7.5%. And I need to disclose 7.5 lakh as my income. There is no other option. Friends, that is the relevance of 6% here. Please take care of that. If my actual margin is between 6 to 8%, I need to disclose more as compared to this assessee. In this case, my total income I need to disclose is 12.3 lakh. Friends, in any way, I do not think so we can segregate our books in a particular way that I can prove that on 1 CR my profit margin is different from as compared to my profit margin on cash receipts. Obviously, as a business has to be seen as a whole. I think it's very difficult to segregate the expenses. Yeah, if it's altogether two different lines, then it may be possible like that banking receipts are through online sales only. And my cash receipts are all through, like you can say, the offline, the counter sale. In that case, I may be able to prove that in case of online sales, my sale price is always less than what is my counter sale. And in that case, I can prove that on my that online sale which I received through banking channel, my profit margin is 5%, but my on counter sale, my profit margin is like 7%. But you need to prove beyond doubt. So please take care of those assessees who are having margin between 6 to 8%. If it is less than 6%, that is good enough. If it is more than 8%, that is good enough. But for 6 to 8%, you have to take care of the same. I think that is clear with the all. Some chats are there. Okay, that's very nice, Mr. Sai Raja Shekhar. Okay, perfect enough. Expenses. Section 4480 is very clear that all expenses shall be deemed to be allowed, whatever the business expenses are there, even depreciation deemed to be allowed. That means whatever the depreciation could have been there in terms of section 32, if you would have been following the normal provisions of the act, that depreciation will also be deemed to be allowed. Now the question arises, if you are we have a counter judgment also, whether assessee is required to prove expenditure to the extent of 92%. In this case, the Chandigarh tribunal said that no, he is not required to prove. Friends, if I go by the, you can say, that harmonious construction of various judgments, that means that when it is a presumptive succession, you are declaring 15% margin, you are not supposed to prove that it is exactly 85%. It could be quite nearby. The supporting surrounding circumstances are more than enough to prove that what is your actual margin. But friends, please remember that section 44AD is only for PGBP head, that is business head. It does not override capital gains, other sources, or salary head or house property. So even if by virtue of your business, any income which is accessible under head capital gains or other sources, that need to be disclosed separately and you need to pay tax on that. And the best example is sale of depreciable asset. If you are selling out any asset which is being used for your business, then there could be profit by section 32 read with section 50, short-term capital gain that you need to disclose separately, and depreciation shall be deemed to be allowed. So that short-term capital gain will be calculated on the basis of depreciated value of the assets. But the best side is that these kind of sections are not applicable, including 43B. If you have made payment in cash, does not matter, more than 10,000. You are supposed to deduct TDS, but you forgot to deduct TDS, there will be no disallowance. If you are making payment to specified persons, does not matter at all. But friends, again, there is a lacuna in that particular case. If I'm having margin of like 15%, I could make payment to my related persons more than reasonable. But the lawmakers have clearly said that even 40 capital A subsection 2 is not applicable. So AO cannot go beyond that particular aspect. By this, the provision can be reduced, but that is not advisable at all. Chapter 6A deductions, that is allowed, except Part C that we have already discussed. Friends, even from this presumptive income, you can claim 80C, 80D, etc. Loss is allowed to be set off. Like if you are having loss under a house property, maximum 2 lakh rupees, or maybe having loss underhead other sources, that you can set off. You may be having brought forward business losses, that you can set off this particular business income, because section 44AD overrides only and only business head and not other sections. Now the question which is relevant for maximum professionals at least, because same issue is there in 44ADA. Partner's salary and interest. Friends, a partnership firm is eligible to opt for 44AD, no doubt. Having partners, and that partnership firm is paying salary and interest to the partners. Normal provisions we all know. That interest is allowed, maximum 12% per annum, provided it is provided in partnership deal. Salary to working partners, that is again allowed, subject to that 90% and 60% of the book profit that we all know how to calculate. Minimum 1.5 lakh in case of losses. Now friends, if we go by the section 44AD around 3 or 4 years back, it was clearly written, whatever the margin you calculate, that 6% or 8% from that, partner salary and interest subject to section 40B will be allowed separately. That was the situation prior to that amendment, but later an amendment was made and that provision was deleted. That provision was deleted. They have not written other way around. Now the law is totally silent regarding partner salary and interest. There is just a single provision in the law that all expenses shall be deemed to be allowed. Now the question arises that partner salary and interest, if we go by the law, the intent of the lawmakers, it says that earlier it was allowed from the 6% or 8%, allowed from 6% or 8%. Now the question arises, what will happen even if it is paid? Even if it is paid. For the corollary of the same is that even if it is paid, then how the margin of that particular partnership firm need to be computed. Friends, again, I'm going to have some that numerical examples by digits to have a better understanding of that particular provision and the open areas also. Now friends, first of all, we go through the old provision, which was there in case of 44AD, and at that time partner salary and profits were allowed. Let's see. For example, there is a partnership firm and very simple P&L having turnover of you can say 2 crore of rupees, profit, whatever profit is there, and that is before salary and interest. Now, as per 44AD, erstwhile, the old one, I need to disclose 8%. Now, for example, 8% is 16 lakh. From that, I can claim interest. Like, for example, 5 lakh rupees. Interest is there. I'm assuming it is within 12%. My book profit is 11 lakh. Now, from this, I can claim salary. Now, for example, actual salary. paid to working partners 9 lakh. But what will be allowed as per section 44AD read with 40 clause B of first 3 lakh 90%, that is 2.7 lakh, balance 8 lakh 60%, that is 4.8 lakh, total salary 7.5 lakh. So in terms of section 44AD read with section 40 clause B, the old one, the salary will be allowed 7.5 lakh, and the balance on 3.5 lakh the firm need to pay tax. That was the provision. And what will be the amount taxable in the hands of partners? Partners के हाथ में कितना taxable होगा? The interest will be taxable equivalent to 5 lakh and salary will be taxable equivalent to 7.5 lakh. Friends, there is section 28 clause V which says that the partner's salary and interest shall be taxable under a business head, and the proviso says that any amount which is not allowed to the partnership firm under section 40 clause B shall be deducted from such profit or such salary or interest for the purpose of computation of taxable salary and interest in the hands of partner. As per 28 clause B, the salary which is taxable in the hands of partner will be 7.5 lakh. This was the old situation, the old law, and we are not having any problem, and we are going into that according to that. Now coming to this particular aspect. Now turnover is 2 crore and actual margin is, you can say, for example, 20% before salary and interest. That makes it 40 lakh rupees. Friends, if no salary or interest is paid to the partners, then there is no issue. The firm is required to pay tax on 40 lakh and nothing is taxable in the hands of partner. Matter is over. Now my question is that even firm is opting for section 44AD and the firm is paying still the salary and interest to the partners, then what will be the legal situation? Now, for example, actual margin before salary and interest to the partner is 20%, that is 40 lakh. Interest I am assuming is 10 lakh rupees and salary I am assuming is 25 lakh rupees. That is quite possible, no doubt. It could be written in the law. What will be allowed as per section 40B is a separate aspect. Now, if I talk about net profit of the partnership firm is 5 lakh. That is 2.5%. Now my question is, if partnership firm is opting for 44AD, and as per 44AD, minimum margin is to be declared as 6% or 8%. Now my question to all of you is that how much margin, how much profit is to be disclosed by the partnership firm? Friends, don't think about the other questions which may arise in your mind by taking a particular view. Because income tax department, when going for scrutiny of partnership firm, they are going to think about the partnership firm only. They are not going to think about the partners at all. So my question is that under section 44AD, which margin is supposed to be declared by the partnership firm? That is first option 20% or 6% or 8%. Reason being actual margin is 2.5%. What do you think, friends? Please use chat box. The firm is paying, I think facts are clear. The firm is paying salary and interest to the partners. Firm wants to go for that section 44AD. Before salary and interest, margin is 20%, that is 40 lakh. 35 lakh has been paid to as salary and interest. Now my question is, firm is want to go for 44AD. What is the margin is required to be disclosed by the partnership firm? Whether it is 20% or 6% or 8% because of 2.5%. Like this 6% or 8% is to be compared with which margin? Which margin means how to compute the actual margin. Friends, earlier there was no problem at all. Earlier we used to start with 40 lakh and accordingly we used to calculate the things. But now after deleting of that particular proviso, We have reply of Mr. M.V. Sharma, that is 20%. Friends, frankly speaking, this is a gray area. Even I have no judgment in my hand in this particular aspect. I can discuss with you the legal situation, the interpretation of the law. We can discuss. That's all. M.V. Sharma is saying that we need to disclose 20% margin. Mr. M.V. Sharma, could you give me some hints why 20% and why not 2.5%? What could be the reason that we are interpreting it to be like 20%?
Because hello?
Yeah, I'm getting your voice.
Yeah. Because when you are opting for 44 AD,
yeah,
you cannot disclose less than 6% or 8%, though you are telling that 2.5%, that is case one.
Yeah.
In such case, you have to go for audit. You are not going to audit because you are going to opt for 44 AD. That is the reason only 20% is you have to declare. It's my view.
You got your point, Mr. M.V. Sharma ji. Now, for this aspect, friends, I need to discuss the aspect of whether 40 clause B is of which part. Like 40 clause B gives you the benefit of some expense or it denies some benefit. Let me discuss that particular aspect and then we will be able to appreciate whether I need to disclose 20% or 6% or 8% by virtue of 2.5%. In any case, I want to go for 44 AD and I'm ready to disclose minimum 6 or 8. That is not the issue. Friends, when we talk about section 40 clause B, 40 clause B is not provision of allowance, is a provision of disallowance. Friends, if you go by the language of the 40 clause B, it says that the interest or salary paid beyond this limit shall not be allowed as deduction to the partnership firm. Like, for example, I can substantiate this particular aspect also. Now, for example, there is a partner's capital contribution. Partner's capital contribution. And that partner's capital contribution is used by the partnership firm not for the purpose of business, but for the purpose of investment. Maybe in the form of land, maybe in the form of FD. Now, what do you think? Whether the interest on such partners' capital contribution should be allowed as business expense to the partnership firm? Now, friends, I'm not focusing upon 44 AD at the moment. I'm talking about the normal computation of business income. If the partner's capital contribution is used not for the purpose of business, but for the purpose of making investment, like purchase of land, which is not used for the purpose of business, or making investment in FD, which has no link with the business at all, should that interest on partners' capital be allowed as business expense to the partnership firm? And I think all of you will agree, no. Friends, regarding the expenses, we have section 30 to 37. And the interest part is dealt by section 36, subsection 1, clause number 3. Which simply says that the interest on any money borrowed shall be allowed as business expense provided it is used for the purpose of business or profession. So friends, first of all, the partner's salary and interest will be allowed as business deduction only and only if that salary and interest crosses section 30 to 37. If any amount which is disallowed by virtue of section 30 to 37 only, then section 40 onward will not help in claiming those amounts at all. Friends, 40 to 43B sections apply only when any particular expense crosses the barriers of section 30 to 37. If that interest is not allowed under section 36(1)(3), then sorry, section 40B will not help you in claiming that interest against your business income at all. So friends, section 40 to 43B are of provisions of disallowance and not of allowance. Instead, what are they claiming? You have to claim salary and interest. First of all, you have to cross the barriers of section 30 to 37. For interest, we have discussed. For salary, obviously, section 37 will apply, and we have to check the multiple factors that we all know. Now, after discussing this aspect, now what is the law says as on date? That all expenses shall be deemed to be allowed. Other question which I want to ask, whether there's interest or salary to partners are business expense or not. Obviously, friends, they are business expense. I require funds for the purpose of business or partnership firm. Now, if I am having funds from partner, how does it is different from having funds from bank? Both are aspects thing. If partners are working for the partnership firm and I do not want to pay salary, I do not want to have to work by them for the firm, then I need to employ some outside employees. I need to pay salary to them. In no doubt, partner salary and interest are in no doubt are business expense, provided they are allowed in terms of section 36(1)(3) and section 37. Now, when they are business expense, then why I need to disclose 20% margin? Obviously, I need to check out the profit margin of the partnership firm after all expenses of the firm, which includes, in my view, partner salary and interest also. And in my view, the actual margin to make it compare with 6% or 8%, the margin of the firm should be treated as 7.5%. And if the firm wants to opt for section 44AD, it need to disclose 6% and 8% and not 20%. Friends, earlier, in my view, when the old law was there, that was not to allow salary and interest, that was to have control over salary and interest. That salary and interest will be allowed as business expense while computing your margin in the business, but to the extent which allows under section 40 clause B only. In my view, after deleting that particular proviso, the whole of the salary and interest which is paid to the partners is deemed to be allowed. I think, in my view, I am a strong view that margin should be treated as 2.5% and not 20%. Friends, you may disagree with this particular view, but if you go by the language of the law, I do not think so there seems to be any ambiguity. Now, another question arises with that is that if we take this particular view, like salary and interest is paid to the partners of 25 lakh or 10 lakh. Now, what are the two views? Okay, one view which I have given to you, and there is another view. First of all, I will give that opinion regarding when we go for view of 2.5%. Whether anything will be taxable in the hands of partner. Yes, friends, salary 25 lakh, interest 10 lakh. Friends, section 28V is clearly applicable, and when nothing is disallowed under section 40 clause B, then whole of the salary and interest will be taxable in the hands of partner. But if you go by the second view and we are declaring margin of 20%, whether anything will be taxable in the hands of partner. Friends, in my view, even if you go by the view of 20%, I think still this 35 lakh will be taxable in the hands of partner. Because as per section 28V, friends, section 28V simply says that any amount which is not allowed to the partnership firm under section 40 clause B shall be reduced from the taxable portion of salary and interest in the hands of partner. Is anything disallowed under section 40 clause B? No. When nothing is disallowed, the still interpretation continues that 100% will be taxable in the hands of partner. So friends, this also interpretation gives support to the view that firm need to disclose margin of 2.5% or 6%, 8% on the basis of that, and not 20%. That is after claiming in full partner salary and interest. Friends, this particular point also matters in case of 44AD. Generally, we chartered accountants are having partnership firms, and we derive that particular salary and interest from that. If that firm you are opting for 44AD, please take care of this aspect. Friends, this is still a gray area because that is a quite recent amendment when this provision was of regarding 40B and 44AD has been deleted. So we have no idea how the lawmakers are going to interpret the same in the long run. There is no clarification. I think we should all, as a combined manner, raise this particular aspect to the department, and the department should issue a clarification in this particular aspect. I think that is clear with all. We can go ahead. Advance tax for income of this business that we all know. For the income of this business, we need to pay advance tax by 15th of March. For 3 installments, we are not supposed to pay any advance tax on the income of this business. TDS liability. Friends, last year they have made the amendment in a clear-cut manner. Earlier there used to be ambiguity. If your last year turnover exceeds rupees 1 crore, you need to deduct TDS in the current year. It is irrespective of the fact whether there is any tax audit or not, you are opting for 44AD or not. It simply depends on the aspect of turnover. And for this purpose also, in my view, turnover need to include GST. Another gray area, which was introduced by 3 or 4 years back, that 5-year concept. Can we go ahead, friends? No issues. I think that is quite clear till now. Okay. So friends, earlier we all know that section 44AD for each and every year was independent. That for every year I can decide afresh whether I want to opt for 44AD or not, provided I am eligible for 44AD. Obviously, if my turnover exceeds rupees 2 CR, that in any case I cannot opt for 44AD at all. And earlier there was a situation if you are need to disclosing profit margin less than 6% or 8% and your income is more than max amount which is not chargeable to tax, then you need to go for maintenance of books of accounts and you need to go for tax audit also. But now they have changed the situation. They have simply said that if you have opted once, section 44AD, and after that, if you want to opt out of that section 44AD next 5 years, then first of all, for next 5 years, after the year of opt out, you cannot opt for 44AD at all, although you are eligible. And next, you have to go for maintenance of books of accounts and audit, provided some conditions are fulfilled. Now, friends, in that case, there are several situations which I am going to discuss with you. First of all, what is the law? Like, for example, year 1, I opted for 44AD. I'm assuming I'm eligible for 44AD. That's a different aspect that we are going to discuss separately. Year 2, followed 44AD. Year 3, followed 44AD. Now, year 4, I want to opt out. My actual margin is less than 6% and I want to opt out. Now, what will be the consequences? I can opt out. There is no doubt the law permits that. In that case, for Y5 to Y9, I cannot opt in 44AD, although I am eligible. Now, this is the first very consequence. If in Y4 I opt out, for Y5 to Y9, I cannot opt in 44AD at all, although I am eligible for the same. So that is the first and foremost consequence. Second, I'm just modifying this particular example. Like Y1 to Y6, I followed 44AD. In Y7 or later, I opt out from 44AD, although I'm eligible. Now for Y8 plus 4 years, is there any barrier? No. Friends, when this particular barrier or lock-in comes into the picture, this barrier or lock-in comes into the picture only when you opt in 44AD for the very first time. And from the very first time, after within next 5 years, you opt out within next 5 years. Then only this barrier, this lock-in comes into picture. Other way around, we can say that if you follow 44AD for next 6 years consecutively, for 6 years consecutively, in Y7 you can opt out. There is no problem at all. And in Y8 you can opt in again. In Y8 you can opt in again. So first of all, what is the consequence? That for Y5 to Y9 you cannot opt in. That is the first consequence. Second, you need to maintain books of accounts. Plus, you need to go for tax audit, provided your income is greater than maximum amount which is not chargeable to tax. For individual, it is 2.5 lakh generally. For partnership firm, it could be 0, provided your income is more than 2.5 lakh. Now, there are two issues that I need to address. First of all, what do you mean by the word income? Friends, this aspect is dealt by two provisions, section 44AD as well as 44AB and 44AA. And in one of the provisions, they have used the word total income. What does that mean? Friends, it is quite possible that your business income is like 2 lakh. You are having house property income of 3 lakh. Now, what is your total income? 5 lakh. This 2 lakh is less than 6%. I'm opting out for 4480 that I'm going through, but still I need to go for tax audit because my total income is more than 2.5 lakh. Although it seems to be illogical, but still, friends, this is the language of the law. If your total income is more than max amount which is not chargeable to tax, you need to go for tax audit. Does not matter at all. So this is the consequence. If yes, your total income is less than 2.5 lakh in case of individual, there is no requirement of maintenance of books of accounts or tax audit. Again, that may lead to the problem how to prove that my income is less than 2.5 lakh, specifically including business income. Secondly, now it is quite possible I'm maintaining books of accounts, I'm going for tax audit, that is okay. Now, for example, in Y8, my turnover is 1.5 CR. My actual margin is 10%. Can I go for 4480? No, because there is a 5-year lock-in. Do I have to go for mandatorily tax audit? Yes. Do I have to go for maintenance of books of accounts? Yes, there is no option. Like, for example, even if it is 20 lakh, margin is 20%. Do I have to maintain books of account? Yes. There is no other option. Even if your cash receipts are less than 5%, your cash payments are less than 5%, still you have to go for tax audit. There is no option because law is ample clear in this aspect. Second issue which I want to discuss, income part we have discussed. Whether I need to go for maintenance of books of accounts and tax audit of Y4 also. Friends, for Y5 to Y9, there is no option. Frankly speaking, there is no option. I need to maintain books of accounts and go for tax audit. What about Y4? Friends, if I go by the literal interpretation of the law, there is no requirement to maintain books of accounts and audit for Y4, but that seems to be again unintended. That seems to be again unintended. It is advisable that the assessee should go for maintenance of books of accounts and tax audit of Y4 also. Only I have one view in my mind in which lawmakers may have intention that for Y4 there is no requirement of maintenance of books of accounts and tax audit. The reason being, when the assessee is going to decide whether he wants to opt in or opt out from 4480 during the previous year or after the previous year. Friends, obviously after the end of the previous year or nearby end of the previous year, the assessee will be able to determine that my actual margin is quite low as compared to 6% or 8%, and I should not go for 4480. Now, is that possible to maintain books of accounts from the back date? He may not be maintaining the proper vouchers and proper bills at all. So that may create problems. So that may be the reason that lawmakers may have intention in their mind that for Y4, the tax audit and maintenance of books of accounts should not be made mandatory. For Y5 to Y9, it is made mandatory because once you have opted out, you know what are going to be the consequences. But in my opinion, friends, for the Y4 also, the books should be maintained and tax audit should be carried out. And obviously, after considering the aspect of the consequences of violation of this maintenance of books of accounts and tax audit. For tax audit, we all know that consequences that 0.5% of the turnover, maximum 1.5 lakh rupees. So for 2 crore of turnover, if I talk about, the maximum penalty is 1 lakh rupees. That's all. So that is the first aspect I want to discuss, how that particular 5 years concept follows. Now coming to other aspect. This I have discussed opt-in situation 1, opt out voluntarily. And after that, if I'm eligible for 4480, I cannot opt for 5 years. Now coming to the second aspect. For Y1 to Y3, 4480. Perfect enough. Y4, my turnover is greater than 2 CR. Can I go for 4480 at all? No, not at all allowed. Am I opting out? No, friends. When I use the word opt out or opt in, that makes gives the impression regarding the decision making of the assessee. Is that assessee taking the decision to opt out from 4480? No. It is by virtue of law that he cannot opt for 4480 at all for Y4. He is making opt out, or you can say out from the 4480 by virtue of law only. In my opinion, in that case for Y5, provided turnover is less than equal to 2 CR, he can opt for 4480. Again, there is no restriction. There should not be no restriction at all, because he is not opting out but is forced to opt out from section 4480. So that's altogether different situation, that by virtue of law you are not. Pardon, I'm not getting your voice properly. Whomsoever is speaking.
Sir, you may continue, sir.
Okay, okay.
They have unmuted themselves.
Okay. So friends, that's the situation 2 that I wish to discuss. Now coming to the situation 3. Friends, that will matter for assessees who are having first year of business, that is financial year 1920 or later. Now, for example, this is Y1 and this is the first year of business. First year of business. Now, there could be multiple situations. I'm assuming all other conditions are fulfilled regarding turnover, nature of business, each and everything. Now, my margin is, for example, 10%, or my margin is, for example, is 4%. There is 2 options for this particular aspect. I can go for 4480, no doubt, and I need to declare 10%. I do not want to follow 4480. I need to maintain books of accounts. Okay, I need to pay tax on 10%. Tax audit will determine whether my turnover is more than 1 CR or not. That we are going to discuss separately. Similarly, here are 2 options. I can go for 4480 and I can declare margin of that 6% or 8%, or I can declare margin of 4% on actual basis. Now my question is that in case of Y1, if I do not want to go for 4480, in both the situations, whether my margin is 10% or 4%, do I need to maintain books of account? I'm assuming my turnover is below 1 CR for the simplicity. First of all, then I will go for that. If turnover is more than 1 CR, then what will happen? My turnover is below 1 crore of rupees. I'm having margin of 10% or 4%. This is my first year of business and I do not want to go for 4480. Whether I am supposed to maintain books of accounts, whether I am supposed to go for tax audit. Friends, books of accounts, in my view, in this case shall be governed by the normal provision of section 44AA. What is that in case of individual? If in case in my last 3 year incomes, in any of the year income was more than 2.5 lakh, or my turnover is more than 25 lakh, or is likely to be in this particular year more than 25 lakh or 2.5 lakh. If it is more than 25 lakh turnover in current year, I need to maintain books of accounts. Do I need to go for tax audit? No. Friends, even if I am declaring 4% margin, I not need to go for tax audit at all. Reason being, when section 44AD read with 44AB, tax audit is required to be go for. The tax audit is required only if first of all I opt in and then opt out. Have I opted in any time section 44AD? No, never. Friends, when there is no aspect of opt-in, you cannot say that you have opted out at any point of time. There is no concept of opt-out here. In my view, in these both the cases, you will be governed by the normal provisions of the law. You are not supposed to maintain books of accounts or tax audit by virtue of section 4480. So if you are having turnover less than 1 CR and this is your first year of business, you need not go for tax audit at all. Books of accounts, again, subject to that limits that we have discussed, 2.5 lakh or 25 lakh. If you are having turnover more than 1 CR, then you need to go for tax audit, subject to one exception, which is introduced from this year very first onward. That is receipts and payments up to 5% in cash as compared to total receipts and payments. So again, that is quite possible. You need not require tax audit up to 5 CR of your that turnover. What about Y2? Again, I am having same situation. Y1, I did not opted for 4480. Y2, my margin is less than 6%. Do I need to go for tax audit? No, friends. In my view, if from very first year of business, if you are maintaining books of accounts and you are not opting 4480 at all, you are not supposed to have tax audit in future at all up to 5 crores of turnover. Friends, 4480 tax audit is only applicable, again I am repeating, only in case once you opt in first. If there is no opt-in, there could not be concept of opt-out at all. So for those assessees who are starting business afresh, friends, maintenance of books of accounts is a quite easy aspect, does not require much. And in any case, for other business, other laws, maybe like GST or maybe some other factors, books of accounts are required to be maintained to some extent. So that may be quite possible that assessee is already maintaining books of accounts, but tax audit is not required up to 1 CR or 5 CR as the case may be. So that is the best thing which I believe that after introduction of section 4480 is there. You can take care of the specific of the assessees who are having first year of business for financial year 1920. And second benefit which I believe is regarding the introduction of limit of 5 crore. Because if you once opt in and then opt out, so after opting out, you need to go for tax audit, whatever the quantum of your turnover may be, whether it is less than 1 CR or more than 1 CR or more than 5 CR. But if you do not opt for 4480 at all, then there is no requirement of audit, tax audit at all up to 5 crore of rupees. You might be saying that, Pankaj Raogi, because of your that particular views, our that professional receipts will be reduced. So friends, that we have to take care of as professional, but I believe that we should be in the favor of the assessee if that is the legal view and not the wrong view. And obviously that creates trust among the assessees that when we talk about the benefit of the assessee, specifically the legal aspects. So that we have already discussed, friends. Maintenance of books of accounts, that is breach of 5-year lock-in and total income exceeds maximum. Please take care of this particular aspect. The total income exceeds maximum. Turnover exceeds 10 lakh or 25 lakh, but income up to max amount not chargeable to tax. That is a maintenance. Similarly, for tax audit, there is a breach of 5-year lock-in and total income exceeds maximum not chargeable to tax. Turnover exceeds 1 crore, but income up to maximum. Okay, new provision. That we all know, friends, there are cash receipts of payment up to 5% of total receipts of payments. Now, friends, after introduction of this particular new provision, there is some, you can say, aeronautical situations in which one assessee may be having on the better profit margin, better, you can say, higher taxpayer, but still that finding it to be difficult and wrong. First of all, I'm briefly highlighting what is the new provision at all. That your business turnover is up to 5 CR. Turnover, again, I need to be seen in the pretext of that ICI guidance note, including GST. Then what is to be seen? That whatever the receipts and payments are there during the previous year, not up to due date, during the previous year. During the previous year. So whatever the receipts are there, out of that total receipts, your cash receipts, here they have not used banking channels or like, they have used cash receipts. If cash receipts are up to 5% of total receipts, similarly for payments, then there is no requirement of tax audit. Friends, the question arises, what is all included in receipts and payments? Whether it includes, first of all, business receipts only or other heads receipts also. Only business receipts, not other heads. But there is an exception. I'm going to elaborate the thing. There is a land and building which is being used for your business. and which is sold during the year for 20 crore of rupees. Although this land and building is assessable under head capital gain head, but this need to be included for the purpose of determination of this condition. Friends, when we talk about this particular cash receipt or payment condition, then gross receipts and gross payments are to be considered, which are in relation to your business, whether accessible under business head or not, whether these are income or not. It is quite possible that during the year you have received loan for the purpose of your business, then that loan will form part of your gross receipts. It is quite possible that your business turnover is up to 5 CR, but your gross receipts and payments may be more than 5 CR. Hypothetically, it may be 20 crores, it may be 25 crore. And of that gross receipts and payments, cash receipts and payments should not exceed 5%. So friends, the calculation of turnover and calculation of gross receipts and cash receipts and calculation of gross payments and cash payments need to be computed separately. They have no correlation at all. Obviously, for cash receipts and payments, contra entries will not be considered. Like contra entry means that from a cash withdrawal from bank. But if there is partner's capital contribution, that is part of gross receipts, there is no doubt. So whatever the business receives from its outsider, that need to be considered. Now friends, imagine the situation. There are two assessee. One is having 1.6 year turnover with 5% margin, who was opting 4480 in prior years. Another having 4.5 CR turnover with 1% margin. Now, friends, this particular assessee, there is no requirement of tax audit. There is no requirement of tax audit. But this assessee, either he needs to pay tax on 6% or he need to go for tax audit. Now, this is the ironical situation after introduction of this 5 crore concept. In my view, that this 5 crore concept must have been given benefit to the assessee who was opting for 4480 till last year. They should have given benefit because they opted for 4480 in the, you can say, the very good faith that otherwise they will be required for tax audit and books of accounts. Now, friends, when there is no audit for up to 5 CR turnover for a particular assessee, accepting that the assessee having very small turnover is required to go for tax audit, I think that seems to be a little bit illogical and wrong and not on ground of equality. They should be given option in that particular case, provided their cash receipts and cash payments are within the limit of 5%. चलते हैं friends आगे इसके अंदर. Friends, in this respect, one thing we should take care of, which is applicable only for assessment year 2021 and not for other years. Friends, we all know that due date of ITR has been extended to 30th of November 2020 for all assessees, whether there is any tax audit or not. Now, regarding 234A interest, the law has been formulated which says that if your tax liability as on 1st of August or 1st of November, that is the original due date, the date after the original due date. If your tax liability is more than 1 lakh, then you need to pay interest under section 234A. Otherwise, you are not supposed to pay an interest under section 234A up to 30th of November. So for the bigger taxpayers who are having shortfall of rupees more than 1 lakh, need to pay 234A interest. Now, friends, we all know that the assessees in specifically the culture which is going on, although that is very wrong culture, they are habit of approaching their professionals in the very last days of the due date, like around 15 days back or 10 days back. They even do not produce their books of accounts to check by the professionals at all. And at that time, it comes to the notice that he is having turnover within 5 CR and cash receipts and cash payments are within 5%. Then there is no requirement of tax audit. If there is no requirement of tax audit, what would have been the original due date? 31st July. If there would have been tax audit, then due date would have been 30th of November. 31st of October. Now, if it is proved, it is that find out that there is no requirement of tax audit, the due date was 31st of July and tax liability comes to more than 1 lakh rupees, then that assessee would be required to pay interest under section 234A. Friends, if that SSC is coming now in the month of October, there will be 3 months interest in that case. So that as professional we should take care of. We should find out those SSCs which are having turnover between 1 CR to 5 CR, and this aspect should be intimated to them. Otherwise, later on when there is a tax liability, interest liability of 4% in the month of November, they may say that, okay, what you have done, you are not a true professional. Avinashi, we will definitely take your query at the end, and that is quite interesting query you are asking. No issues in that. Let me proceed at first of all the aspects I wish to discuss with you all. Section 44 ADA, that we all know for professionals, the professionals are defined. Liable for audit. Now friends, I am coming to the straightforward, the technical aspects of the gray areas of this particular aspect. And this partner of a firm aspect which are going to discuss not only matters for 44 ADA but 44 AD also. Friends, it is in no doubt that the partner's salary and interest is taxable under a business head. No doubt. Now, I'm not talking about whether that partnership firm is following 44 AD or AD or not. Now, for example, there is a partnership firm having a business turnover or professional receipts of 10 crore of rupees. Partnership firm having business turnover or professional receipts of rupees 10 crore. Now, that partnership firm is paying salary and interest to the partners. Now, partner's salary and interest is more than 1 CR or 50 lakh, as the case may be, depending upon business or profession. Like, for example, we are all chartered accountant, we are partner in partnership firm, and our salary and interest from that partnership firm is more than 50 lakh rupees. Friend, that is taxable under business head. There is no doubt in that. The question is that whether I'm supposed to have tax audit of my personal books of accounts. Personal here means the books of accounts in respect of the salary and interest which I received from my partnership firm. Do I need to go for the tax audit? Friends, that amount which I have received as salary and interest is taxable under business head. Now, business head receipts of mine are more than 50 lakh rupees. Friends, there are plethora of judgments in respect of the same, that that particular partner is supposed to have tax audit in this particular case. These are the judgments which I have quoted. This particular judgment in respect of Amal Ganguly is in respect of one Big Four partner. And friends, I will feel happy that I'm getting my that professional receipts gets tax audited by virtue of this particular aspect, that I'm deriving salary and interest of more than 50 lakh from my partnership firm. What does that mean? That means that my firm is earning good amount of professional receipts. So what is the problem in getting tax audit? Now, because of tax audit, I will try to reduce my professional receipts. Never. So that is a quite interesting thing, that we are happy with the tax audit. No. So friends, it is decided in these various judgments that if partner salary and interest is more than 50 lakh or 1 crore, depending upon business or profession, then that partner needs to get tax audited for at least the receipts which he receives. So friends, it is highly advisable that we should maintain separate bank account for the purpose of receipt of salary and interest from the partnership firm. Otherwise, tax audit will be of whole sum of my whole bank accounts and not of that professional receipts only. So everything is going to be reported in tax audit form in that case. So that please take care of this. And this particular aspect can be comforted from this aspect also. Friends, against salary and interest which is taxable in the hands of partner, you can claim all expenses. Like, it is quite possible that you borrowed from a particular friend or bank, and that you invested in the partnership firm as capital contribution. Now, if you are receiving interest on partner's capital contribution, against that interest, you can claim that bank's interest as expense. You are using a particular car which is in your personal name for the purpose of commuting between office to residence and residence to office, and for professional purposes, you can claim that particular car expenses as against salary and interest. So please take care of this particular aspect. Now, eligible SSC for 44 AD. Again, this is the, you can say, the lack of concentration from the department aspect. As per the Act, any entity can opt for Section 4480, including LLP. But if you go by the memorandum, when this particular 4480 was introduced, in memorandum it was written that it is applicable only for individual, HUF and partnership firm, not LLP. So that memorandum creates the confusion, but we all know that the memorandum is just a clarification, or you can say just a statement by the department which cannot override Act at all. And in Act, there is no restriction regarding the nature of assessee. Yes, generally we know for the professionals, the best mode of entity is LLP and companies are not allowed. But it may be possible in case of a particular company, a particular profession, the companies are allowed. And friends, the thing is that if a company is carrying on a professional work, can we say that that company is not eligible for 4480 or is not a profession at all? Friends, it is quite possible there is a company in which all chartered accountants are there and they are not providing certification services. Because in any case, in the mode of company, certification services are not allowed, but they are providing like consultancy services. In my view, that is purely professional nature work. And when it is being provided by chartered accountant, that is squarely company is covered up by the word profession. That is 44AA subsection 1. Same with the friends, if I talk about hospital, that could be in company form. So that is the eligible assessee. Books of accounts. Friends, in case of professions, now there is a different picture. If you are opting for 44ADA, there is no requirement of tax audit, but still you are required to maintain books of accounts. Because in respect of 44ADA, there is no corresponding amendment has been made in 44AA. In case of professions which are covered up by 44AA1 and you are opting for 44ADA, still you have to go for maintenance of books of account. There is no other option. In any case, every professional has to maintain books of accounts, whether his receipts are less than 1.5 lakh or more than 1.5 lakh. Friends, in case of profession, if we go by 44AA, it talks about some specified profession. In case of specified profession, it says that if your receipts was more than 1.5 lakh in preceding 3 years, you need to maintain prescribed books of accounts. And if it is other than specified profession, then you need to maintain general books of accounts. General, by word general, I here means the books of accounts which are in ample, sufficient to compute your total income. That's all. It means that for the purpose of profession, there is no option to not to maintain books of accounts. Whether you go for 44ADA, what is the quantum of your receipts, what is the quantum of your profit, does not matter at all. So friends, that is the particular aspect I wish to discuss. So I think we can start with the queries. And before queries, Ms. Bharti.
Yes, sir. Sir, you're got muted, sir. Yeah.
Any particular aspect you wish that I should discuss with our professional colleagues? After that, we can go for the queries. Because there are not much queries in the chat box I'm seeing. Is there any another platform?
Also? Not in the chat box, but members, when the question and answers will be raised, we can open for
okay.
Unmute themselves and ask the queries, sir.
Okay, that will be nice. Yeah. So in the chat box, I think there is only one query. Avinash is saying that so we can learn how knowledge of Marwadi makes our practice much better from this session as bonus. Avinash, for this aspect, I want to say that being a Marwadi as well as Baniya, so I have in my blood to have something, not to give something. So in Hindi we say कि हम लेना जानते हैं, देना नहीं जानते. And the purpose of this particular session is again to that increase my knowledge, having discussion with you all, and not to give you something. So Avinash is having a query that if assessee is having 2 house properties during the year, as a result, by virtue of law, he has mandatorily opt out of section 44AD. In such case, whether he has to maintain books and go for tax audit and not required as it's opted out due to virtue of law. Avinash, in this respect, I want to have one clarification from you. Having 2 house properties, how does it result into that I need to opt out from 4480 for my business? But I'm assuming that my business is a separate business and I'm having 2 house properties from which I'm deriving rent. and that rent is not my business at all, renting activity. So having two house properties, how does it result into that I have to opt out of 44AD? I'm not able to get that particular aspect where the loss is.
Avinash, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question clearly with the speaker.
Okay, I may be getting one situation. I think Avinash ji is maybe not be available at the moment, and he can go through that particular view to it later on. I have heard from one particular doctor in this particular aspect. I think that may be the situation which is having Mr. Avinash is in mind. That what happens till last year, or even if I believe till last year, or maybe last to last year, till last year, there was no restriction in the case of ITR 1 and 4, even if I'm having house property more than one. There was no restriction. From this year onward, they have made clarified if I'm owning more than one house property, I cannot go for ITR 1 and 4. So recently, I received a call from a doctor, and he used to disclose his income under Section 44AD and having like several house properties. He said that I will not be eligible to claim for 44AD this year. What to do? Do I need to maintain books of accounts, audit each and everything? So I simply said that having two house properties, what the law says that you cannot go for ITR 4. In that case, you need to go for ITR 3. Okay, that is the requirement of the income tax law. But that does not mean that you cannot opt for 44AD or 44ADA. Even in ITR 3, there are ample columns where you can disclose your income under Section 44AD or ADA. You are not supposed to fulfill your balance sheet and profit and loss account in that case. In that case, you need to fill out that part B of balance sheet and part B of profit and loss account, where you say that the no books of accounts are maintained, and accordingly I'm filling out. So friends, you can go for ITR 3 in that case, but ITR 3 gives you the ample column regarding 44AD, 44ADA and 44AE. All columns are there. Okay, Avinash, thank you.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yeah.
I'm M.V. Sharma.
Okay, please, sir.
Sir, in the previous example, what you said in the partnership form, whether to go for 20% or 6% or 8% when my net margin is 2.5%, the previous example, you said that interest at 10 lakhs and remuneration 15 lakhs case.
Yeah.
You said that it is 6% or 8%.
Yeah.
But in such case, when the turnover is 2 crores and when you are opting for 6% or 8%, how the 25 lakhs of interest and remuneration can be taken out of that profit and claimed as deduction in the hands of the partners? You said that 28.5. My question is like this. When I said 20%, it is 40 lakhs of profit. And therefrom, you can deduct the interest and remuneration of partners of 25 lakhs. And balance 15 lakhs or whatever it is, that is taxable in normal.
Balance 5 lakh. We have taken 25 lakh of salary, 10 lakh of interest, balance is 5 lakh. That is 2.5% of 2 crore.
Right. That is 5 lakhs. Yeah. But when the 4482 says, any deduction allowable under the provisions of section 30 to 38 shall deemed to have been already given full effect. You said that it is 3613 and 37, it can be claimed as such. Just to give a little more clarity on that particular example.
Okay, I got your point, Mr. Sharma ji. The thing is that the law says that, first of all, you need to declare a margin of 8%. I'm just forgetting about 6% aspect. That you all know when 6% is applicable. Right. For the simplicity, I'm using the word 8%. You need to declare 8% or the higher margin claim to be earned. Now, the 44AD subsection 2 says that in that case, all expenses shall be deemed to be allowed. Now, what do you mean by the word all expenses? The all expenses, what I mean, which are provided under section 30 to 37. And even partner salary and partner interest are also covered up by section 30 to 37 only, and not by 40 clause B. What I have stated that the 40 clause B is the provision of disallowance and not the provision of allowance. It puts a restriction it puts a restriction on the upper limit of the salary and interest. When the salary and interest are covered up by section 32-37, so according to that 44AD, that shall also be deemed to be allowed. Now, what is the, you can say, the interpretation of this particular aspect? That means that whenever I have to check out my actual margin, that actual margin I need to compute not before partner salary and interest, but before partner salary, but after partner salary and interest. Because partner salary and interest are also part of my business expense, and by virtue of section 32-37 only. Yes, in case if they are not allowable under section 32-37, then it's altogether different thing. I'm not discussing about that thing. The partner salary and interest are to be subtracted. Then I need to check out which is my actual margin. Now, in my example, actual margin is coming to be 2.5%. If I want to go for 44AD, in that case of that firm, I need to disclose minimum margin of 8%. So that I want to convey that even after the amendment, that partner salary and interest will be treated as fully allowed. And that means that what is the margin you need to declare? The margin you need to declare is after partner salary and interest and not before that. Because earlier there was a proviso to restrict the partner salary and interest. Earlier there was not a provision that from 8% or 6% you claim salary and interest. Earlier there was a provision that whenever you are calculating your 44AD margin, for calculating that 44AD margin, your partner salary and interest should not exceed the limits provided by 40 clause B. So there is a difference between the provision of allowance and provision of disallowance. So earlier there was a provision of restriction even in 44AD. So that restriction has been removed, which gives the indication that I need to compute my margin after the partner salary and interest only.
In such case, those amounts are taxable in the hands of the firms, in the hands of the partners or not?
But I believe that according to this interpretation, when then all expenses are deemed to be allowed, that is the interpretation of 44AD subsection 2, that gives the indication that partner salary and interest will be taxable in the hands of partner. Simultaneously, I will to lay stress on section 28 clause 5. What it says, that any salary or interest which is paid to the partner shall be taxable in the hands of partner under business head. That is a clear-cut written. And at that section 28 clause 5, there is no task or no talk about section 44AD at all. They simply say that partner salary and interest is taxable, that's all.
No.
Even if you declare 20% margin in the hands of firm in our example, what I believe that the income tax department will make partner salary and interest taxable in the hands of partner even though. And they will ask for double tax because income tax officer of partners and income tax officer of that partnership firm may not necessarily be the same.
Yes.
And we all know that culture which is going on in the income tax department till date, that every assessing officer is concerned with his assessee and not with the other assessees at all. Assessee, I can replace the word assessee with his tax collection.
Yes.
That is a much better word.
Yeah.
Although after the introduction of this faceless scheme, I think that aspect is going to be that blurred out and totally ruled out, that there is a focus upon the tax targets and all sort of aspects. Because in any case, the single person is not going to decide anything.
Thank you. And one more supplementing is this ICDS is also applicable to presumptive tax. I think ICDS.
Okay, I got your point. The ICDS, in my view, are not in totality applicable for the purpose of that presumptive taxation, except for determination of turnover.
Yes. Revenue recognition.
Revenue recognition, we can say. But that is again provided by the circular and not by the ICDS itself, because regarding the ICDS, it has been said that that is applicable only in case the assessee is following accrual basis of accounting and liable for tax audit.
That's true. In case of retentions in contracting works, then it's a little difficult when the assessee's turnover is 1.96 crores and the retentions of 8 lakhs or 7 lakhs, which as per ICDS, it includes, because of ICDS says retentions also includes.
Also need to be included, yeah, on percentage basis need to be included.
Out of 2 crores and automatically this tax audit will happen. He is deprived of going for this 44 AD because
That is
of
quite
performance.
possible. Yeah. I agree with you, Mr. Sharma ji. That is quite possible because of these marginal cases. The dispute could be there. So, and if we go by that intent of the lawmakers in totality, they believe that turnover need to be computed after application of ICDS only.
No, I'm not asking for your acceptance. Is there any way out of that? Just I'm asking you that.
I do not think so. Is there any way out because the ICDS again are mandatory to follow? Yeah, you can go for the legal fight that ICDS you simply said that is mandatory only for the assessee having tax audit. And for tax audit, the turnover is need to be computed. And for turnover, you cannot go for ICDS. At least you can go by the section which are mandatory to be followed by every person, like 145A. 145A does not talk about tax audit. That talks about that GST is not to be included. But regarding retention money, the act is totally silent. When act is totally silent, obviously the ICDS cannot override the act at all.
Yes.
So I can take a plea, I can take a defense that by virtue of act, my turnover is 1.96 CR and retention money cannot be included at all. Because when act is silent, obviously the accounting standards need to be go for. That is well settled by the Supreme Court in various judgments like Challapalli Sugar Mills, like Woodward Governor, if I talk about. So that is the ICDS retention money part. But 145 regarding GST, that is dealt by that act even. So that need to be included. So that is the only defense which I am able to derive at this particular moment, which I can take for this particular situation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Friends, any other query? When we have chat. In my view, there is no restriction to maintain books and declare the income actually achieved, but offer the same income under 44 ADA. In such case, it still says no books maintained for reporting in the IT. Mr. Ramakrishna is asking that his view is that there is no requirement to maintain the books, and in view if we are disclosing that income margin of 6% or 8%, although margin is more than that, declaring 6% or 8% is more than enough, because in case the scrutiny is there, we can give a defense that no books are maintained because the law does not require to maintain books. Am I clear with Mr. Ramakrishna what you want to ask?
Yes, sir. But
Okay.
the declaration is actually, whatever is actually achieved only is declared. It's not that 6 or 8%. It is actual achieved is more than 8%. And that is what is offered. Only they are reporting that they are not maintaining books. That's all.
Again, if actual margin is 15%, do you want to ask that the declaring 8% is more than enough?
No. They are declaring income also at 15% only. But
Okay.
they are mentioning that they are not maintaining books because in the form of return.
Provided you are following 44 AD.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you are like going for ITR 3 without 44 AD, you are saying that no, I'm not following 44 AD. Maybe it is your first year of business. Then you need to maintain books of accounts where your income exceeds 2.5 lakh.
It's an existing SC for several years and he's maintaining books, offering whatever is achieved. But he says, I'm not maintaining books. Because
that is good enough. That is good enough. The thing is that Mr. Ramakrishna, if you go by the language of the that ITR,
yeah.
First of all, there is a General 1 schedule. First of all, there is a schedule General 1, in which it is asked whether you are required to maintain books under section 44AA.
Yeah.
Now, it is quite possible that you are maintaining books in actual life.
Yes.
That is your personal decision. But as per 44AA, you are not required to maintain.
Yes.
Even if you are maintaining books, you can say that you are not required to maintain and you can select no. That is the first aspect.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now coming to schedule, balance sheet and P&L.
Yes.
That does not start with whether you are required to maintain books under 44AA or not. That says that whether you are maintaining books or not.
Yes.
If you are maintaining, fill out schedule part 1. If you are not maintaining, fill out part 2 of schedule, balance sheet and P&L. So both are different aspects. Like in case of a company,
yes,
it is quite possible that company's turnover is below the limits which is provided by 44AA. Am I supposed to maintain books of accounts because of 44AA? No. But do I require to fill out part 1 of schedule, balance sheet and P&L? Yes.
Yes.
Because I am maintaining books of accounts by virtue of other law. Now coming to your example in case of individual, like in case of 44AA, there is a column whether you are maintaining books or not. You can select no because you are opting for 4480. There is no problem. But when you come to the part of schedule, balance sheet and schedule P&L, if you are supposed to maintain books of accounts by virtue of other law, Maybe it is because of GST law, or maybe some other law. I may not be having idea. Maybe it's because of some state laws. Then if you are filling out that we are not maintaining books in schedule, balance sheet and P&L, then we are wrong. Then there is a wrong declaration from the perspective of assessee. Then ideally that balance sheet and P&L must be filled out. Yeah, if the assessee is maintaining voluntarily books of account, then it is decision of the assessee whether to say that he is maintaining books or he wants to fill out the part B of the schedule, balance sheet and P&L. So please take care of the difference of the word. The schedule general 1 and schedule balance sheet and P&L altogether are different and they have no linking at all. The only link is that if you select 44AA to be yes, then there is no option but to fill the part 1 of schedule balance sheet and P&L.
Thank you, sir. But one supplement. Assuming that there is no need, see, he is not obliged under any law, not even under GST law.
Yeah.
Okay. He is maintaining books. Still, can we say that no books case and then fill only those last 4 items?
Sir, in that case, that obviously, again, we are giving a little bit wrong declaration. But again, that is a defense. First of all, under any law, I'm not required to maintain. Second thing, the problem will only be in case if there is a search or survey and the books of accounts are being attached. Okay. But again, that books, obviously, when we are being maintained voluntarily, obviously, they are not going to be 100% perfect enough. So we can take a defense that these are like kind of a memorandum books of accounts and not on that proper 100% double entry concept. So these cannot be treated as that technically books of accounts when they are not 100% perfect enough.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Members, any more queries or we shall wind up the session?
Thanks, Avinash. So friends, it was my pleasure to address that Vizag branch of SIRC. And before COVID-19, I never think of that I'm going to address you people all, and specifically the South Indian people, which I believe to be the best in knowledge in the whole India, the South Indian persons. The dedication, the hard work they do. And it's very frank, I belong to the North India, no doubt. Vaise Rajasthan is the Western India, but I am sitting in Delhi. But no doubt the level of knowledge, the level of interpretation, the way they think of is best in terms of the whole India, what I personally do. Even if I talk about the CA student level education, I have my colleagues, or you can say my cousins are there in South India, like Bangalore and all sort of things. So I have seen the coaching concept of in the South India versus the North India is altogether different. What we are having in North India is like a kind of a spoon feeding, but it's altogether different in South India. So it's my pleasure to address you all. And specifically, my reference was given by Mr. Kumar to our chairperson, Ms. Bharti. And he appreciated me over the phone and said that we are planning to have a seminar there. I simply said that you believe that I have done good and I have deliberated good, but I do not think so. That many professionals are there, they are quite good in knowledge and the technical aspects. But still, thanks, Ms. Bharti, and thanks you all for the patience listening and giving me such opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Actually, Kumar sir has joined, but I don't know he is available or not. He was the person who has identified you and has communicated to me. When I asked sir, I want to have a session on presumptive taxation, he said, just now I have seen in the YouTube, your link he has sent to me. After seeing your session, it's really great, sir, that you have spoken complete English because the YouTube it was completely in Hindi. So that was a really very nice session, sir. So I thought, okay, if your acceptance is there for us, our members will definitely benefit with your deliberations. So
definitely, yeah.
South Indians only, our knowledge will be within us only. So when we listen to other region members, then our knowledge will also get enriched. Okay, we can do this way also. Like we'll be having a new ideas.
Definitely, it's nice interacting, and
but we are missing your presence here in Visakhapatnam. Definitely, maybe if COVID ends before my tenure, or I request our vice chairman is also available in his tenure, that you have to come and visit Visakhapatnam branch and members.
Liable to pay any taxes. It will be the members of the business trust who will be liable to pay taxes on it. So to identify such gains arising out of capital gains, specifically from income from the business trust and all, a new line item has been included stating, what and all are as per your normal capital gains.
Good evening, Pankaj sir.
What is received from past due as a
Sir, I am Vice Chairman of Visakhapatnam branch, sir, Murali Krishna.
Nice, sir. Nice meeting you.
So nice to hear you for this session. Definitely, I will utilize the opportunity